tradition at boot camp that we bring back a former boot camper who's been successful on the bar exam. And so it was a year ago,
Yes.
and you were sitting in boot camp.
Yes.
Yes. You want to tell people about that experience, and then we'll back up from there. But just talk a little bit about what it was like to be at the first boot camp.
It was interesting because it was the first time we were going to see Jackson face to face, and we were going to do photo reading practices with someone that it was instructing us how to do it and correcting our methods. So it was interesting. It was more scared than afraid. It was a challenge. What was I going to be confronted with? So it was good, it was interesting, it changed my mind. It was a confirmation that I was doing photo reading correctly, that we were doing it right, and it was a great weekend. It was so much fun. It was interesting in seeing how we played with the oranges and how we played with every color, and how we did the mind maps in a different way, how we understood the mind maps, because we were listening to them on the Paul Sheely's audios, but we were going on our own, and we got the opportunity to correct our mind maps. That for me was a great tool for my preparation for the bar.
Yeah, I remember that first day you were making your mind maps, and talk a little bit about that.
What I used to do was we bought these drawing notebooks, the biggest one that we could buy, and we did a huge mind map, putting every single detail in the mind map, because we didn't know that you put clues or that you put stuff that make you remember the subject. So it was so crowded that you couldn't read the mind maps. You couldn't do anything with them. And it was everything black and white. Everything, instead of being disorganized for you to get your brain entertained and looking and paying attention on what you're doing, it was so kind of a chart instead of a mind map, but it was good. So
it was a step, right?
It was the process of changing to the formal, correct way of doing mind maps.
All right, well, so let's back up a little bit, all right? When did you first come to take the Florida bar exam, and what brought you into the position where you needed to take it?
So I've been graduated from law school since 2004. I took Puerto Rico bar. I've been practicing since maybe 2006, 2007. All of a sudden the economy in Puerto Rico was going down, so we needed to change. Trying to improve our economic situation, we were trying to do different things. And all of a sudden, we got here, we started looking at the bars, we were arguing jurisdictions. I was like, let's go to Texas, and he was like, no, we're not going to Texas. I can ask for reciprocity in Texas. But he didn't like Texas so much. So we started looking at Florida just because it was closer to home, and in the event that we needed to go back to our families, it was going to be easier. So we started doing the Florida process, and I took the exam. I didn't pass. I was looking through the YouTube, and I saw your videos. And that's how I got in contact with Jackson. So I enrolled in Celebration, and I was so scared that I didn't took it for a whole year. I keep enrolling and postponing and enrolling and postponing. And finally I did it, and I failed. But I've been...
But you did it.
But I did it because it was a challenge just to take it.
Right. Now, I got to stop you here for a second, because you're being really too modest in some ways. Your English was not great when you got here, okay? I mean, we had some conversations where I was like, I don't know what she's saying. I mean, I just got nothing. But you were working really hard, and I remember I said to you, you've got to get better at English. Remember that? When I said you got to be in the English bubble, English only bubble, and you gave me a look. It was like, oh, I don't know. But we knew that the challenge wasn't that you didn't have the ability or the intellect. It was that you had to be able to do this in English under time conditions for a test that's very, very difficult. And for those of you who don't know, the Florida bar exam still has this ridiculously low pass rate. for everybody, but for a repeat bar taker, it's down in the 25th, 30 percentile. So it's a very tough test. And when we take Puerto Rican attorneys, for whom English is not the first language, we could generally say it's about a 5% pass rate. It's a very, very tough exam. So this accomplishment is like over the top. It's an amazing accomplishment. So you went, you took the exam, you didn't pass. What did that, it feels bad, but what did you do with that information at that point?
There's nothing to do. There's no person that has been able to say to anyone, I went back in time and changed it. Right. All you have to do is face forward, keep on moving, and do the changes that you need to do. It maybe doesn't take you one time or maybe two. It doesn't matter how many times it takes you. I've been a practicing attorney for 11 years, yeah. And it was a struggle for me. We have different law, it's different in some kind of areas, but the difficulty was there. And talking about English, the funny story is that I was born in the Dominican Republic. And it was Jackson that told me, you have accomplished so much. And I didn't realize it. I started learning English in 7th grade because 5th and 6th grade, when we moved to Puerto Rico, it doesn't count. I didn't learn anything. So I started in 7th grade. And for me to be able to take the Florida bar, study, and do all the process in English, it was a whole change. The first month I was with a huge dictionary looking words, just the first month. Right. And after the first, I know that I looked unconscionability like 1,000 times, and I wrote it down, and it wasn't even good. Like for real, this is an easy word. Yeah. But it was interesting how to see the changes that I was making, how I was moving forward. Maybe this exam I didn't pass, but I saw the difference and the improvement of my scores, and also the maturity of the knowledge in my concepts and how I was grasping the material, and I was making better essays.
Yeah, and I think this was a big point, is that I could see as a mentor that Evelyn was getting better by leaps and bounds, okay? And I knew that it wasn't a question of whether or not you could pass, it was just when it would happen and how that would happen. And so one of the variables that I always look at is what's the student's mindset around that? Because some people, and it's understandable, you don't pass, you feel awful, you feel like you're a failure. And so we had this conversation in which we talked, and I said, look at all the things you've accomplished. Look at where you are in life. And I asked about your friends growing up, remember? And I said, how many of your friends are trying to take the bar these days? None. Yeah, it was a very small number. And I said, so if you really think about it, you're already a success. Now we just have to put the cherry on top. We have to put the icing on it. And one of the great parts about you has always been that you are just relentlessly going after it and looking to find, how do I do something different? You weren't just repeating the same stuff the same way, right? So then we introduced photo reading to you. Let's talk a little bit about what you thought when you first heard about photo reading.
That it was crazy. That's simple.
Yeah.
You gaze at the page, but you always think you're doing it wrong. There's not such different ways to gaze at a page. You just have to look at it and focus on the page, and that's it. You have to trust the process. I think that was the hardest part for me. Yeah. I was like, Jackson, this is not working. I'm not doing anything. This is not working. And the hardest part was believing that I knew the stuff, that it was there, that I was doing something by just flipping the pages and doing the process. It was hard. Yeah. I started doing multiple choices, doing 3.3 minutes, 40 seconds. Because of the photo reading, I was able to download it to 1.15, 1.20. That was better for the essays. I was doing 53, 54 multiple choices per section?
Yeah.
And you're supposed to do 100. And that was the biggest leap for me with photo reading.
Yeah.
It was being able to do it faster.
Yeah. How many times would you say you would photo read an outline?
Every night.
Every night.
You just grab a book. I just have it there. Grab a book and start. And it was flipping the book upside down and just doing backwards and forward.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that. Yeah. Who thought?
Yeah, right.
You just have to do it. You just have to trust that everything you put in today will be there, and tomorrow you're gonna sum and add more stuff, and it's just like you're building a building.
Right.
It's one block at a time.
Yeah.
So it's one book at a time. Just flip it back and forward, and do activation process. I think the hardest part for me was the activation.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was good. It's weird. You're gonna feel like, I think I called you driving to Tampa, and I was like, Jackson,
Yeah.
There's nothing on my mind. I have nothing. How am I gonna go take an exam? There's nothing there.
Do you remember my answer?
Yes. Everything is fine.
Everything is fine.
He's there.
It's all there, and it's going to come to you when
Yeah.
you need it, which is the spontaneous activation that we've been talking about. When you get into the exam, right, you see the questions, and then what happens?
Just pop the answer right there.
Yeah.
It was there.
Yeah.
It was hard.
If somebody said to you, should I photo read, what would you say?
Yes.
Yeah. See, there's no hesitation.
No hesitation.
But it's such a strange thing, so different, right, than the way we learn to read. And I know that one of the questions you had initially was, since English was not your first language, could you photo read in English? What would happen, right? And would that work for you? And we get that question a lot from people who are not native English speakers. But what happens is that you photo read. If there's any translation that's done, it's happening non-consciously, and then it's coming back in. So it actually was a way to get around the unconscionability problem, wasn't it?
And it was interesting because I thought I needed to translate everything.
Yeah.
And that's a mistake. And even when I was learning English, my teacher said to me, don't think in Spanish and then translate it.
Yeah.
Just start thinking in English.
Right.
And I thought that I had to do the photo reading in Spanish, and that it was a mess. I was very confused on that part. And I was like, if my brain works, it doesn't work in just one language. How is it gonna work in English if I'm trained to do it in Spanish for my whole life?
Right.
And it works. And I was getting better at reading, understanding words, and even the concepts of the law.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
better for me.
Yeah. So the photo reading really replaced your traditional reading left to right,
Yes.
word for word. Okay. So then we added mind mapping. And you came to boot camp and you're like, whoa, this is a big mess. What do I do with this? And that was a bit of an eye-opener for you, I know.
We are taught to do the linear process.
Yeah.
It was like after all these years, we are learning this. Seriously, why didn't you teach it to me earlier?
Yeah.
It was easier, it was faster to learn and faster to do the whole subject. And even though you put 3 hours for lectures, for reading, you can use that time for doing the photo reading and working on your mind maps. And I was still feeling that I was behind, and I think I pushed myself more than what I needed to, because I was so afraid. In one of the exams that I took, I was reading everything consciously and doing the photo reading because I wasn't trusting the process. So I stopped reading consciously and I keep on doing the photo reading. The mind maps for me, still today, if I have to say it, I say that I don't do a mind map for one subject. I didn't do only one. I did like different mind maps. I did one, the big picture, then smaller subjects.
So you broke it down to smaller pieces, right?
Yes.
So that you could work with it, so it made more sense to you, right?
And it was easier because you understand one concept of one part of the law, but there's, for me, defamation, oh my God. And let's not talk about constitutional law, right?
We're not going to talk about that now.
So,
We had tears over that.
and that was the passing question.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So defamation for me was tricky, and I was doing different mind maps of defamation just because I needed to to get more knowledge of the concept. I was confused, and every single multiple choice, I was getting it wrong. So for me, just doing single mind maps of the subject that I felt weak,
Yes.
that I keep on failing the multiple choices or the essay, it was good for me.
Yeah, and you used a lot of colors and images, right? You had very...
You don't have my bag, like that one.
Yeah, it was crazy. She had a huge bag of markers and a big pad, right? We're a little more sophisticated now. We've gotten to computers more, but you know, it was great because you were drawing them all out and then talking to people and seeing other people do it. And our boot camp that year was in a much smaller space with many people, and it was very crowded and crazy. And everyone's kind of jostling their way, and they've all got these big art pads, and they're like, "Get out of my way! I'm making my mind map here." You know, so it was a wild experience, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And I tried the computer ones, and I don't think for me. I know everyone has to do what it works for them, but for me, doing it by hand, I could remember on the exam. Well, my mind map was this, and it was around this area. Like that's the process of the mind map.
Yeah.
And I could remember what it was and what I needed to do to do the multiple choice or the essay question.
Yeah, I think there's the kinesthetic value, and I think if you are designed, if that works for you, I think there are people that can type their mind map, see it, read it into, record it, and get the same effect. But I think what Evelyn is really saying, I want to emphasize, is you got to do what works for you. There's no single way to do this. There's the way that works, and then you go at it. So you left boot camp and you went to take the exam in February. What happened in February?
It was interesting. I sat there. I was so scared. I couldn't relax. The information never came out. So it was like I was standing there. I know the knowledge is there. I was passing the exams, but nothing came out on the exam date. Yeah. And
that was frustrating.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
I saw one CBR student get up an hour after the exam started, and I was like, how can he do it? So I started doing the breathing exercises, started to calm down, and then started to do the process and do the work. But it's frustrating that you thought that you have to trust this blindly. You have to go 100% in. And I think I was so afraid that I carry my fearness with me to the exam. Yeah. So it was not good.
Yeah. So now you got the sort of oh man, what do I do? I tried this, it didn't work. So what was your thought process at that point?
That I was doing it wrong.
Yeah.
That something was not working. That I needed to go back, and maybe it was me not understanding the law. That it was maybe a process that I need to learn. Like, it's not that you don't know it, you know it, but I thought that I needed to know it more. So I started earlier, and I read the whole book. Yeah. I just needed to feel that I knew it, because that's how I've been studying my whole life. I read it. And all of a sudden, I said, like, you know this, what's wrong, what's happening? And we talk again, and we keep on talking. And it was weird, because it's there, you're doing the photo reading, you're doing the mind maps, why it's not improving? Even though my score were going up, but why can't I pass? So again, I said, like, I need to find a way for me to be relaxed at the exam, so I bought the paraliminals. And then I couldn't stay away from them. They were amazing. Yes. Next exam, I was with my headphones, listening to paraliminals, because for me, it was the best tool for me to be able to stay relaxed. It was what I needed, I think.
Yeah, I think it unblocked you. I think it gave you the chance to just express what you already knew, and instead of being locked up in all that negative stuff, which was easy to do. I mean, look, you knew the numbers, you knew the statistics, you knew the chances for somebody coming from your background taking this exam. They were not good. I mean, just be candid about it, not good. And Kelly and I would talk after some of the group coaching calls, and Kelly would say, I really want Evelyn to pass. She's doing all the right things. I mean, she can make it happen. And I said, well, You know that, and I know that. Evelyn needs to know that. Once Evelyn knows it, it's going to happen. And that's what started to happen with the paraliminals. It started to just free you up a little bit to begin to believe in yourself. And we've seen some of that this weekend with some of the students here sort of going to, like, whoa, I can do this, right? And that's a big moment, isn't it?
Yes, and I think that's something that I was experiencing, but I wasn't realizing that that was the feeling. When I did my boot camp, that was the experience that I got. Oh my God, this is different. This is something for me to learn. And with the paraliminals, it was just like real. This is real. It's happening. You can do it. I still started feeling more confident. I was able to do the exam. I was able to finish. I was able to read the multiple choices and not finishing only 50-something multiple choices.
Yeah.
And it was a life-changing for me, the preliminals, I think.
How long did it take you to do the 100 questions on the multi-state? Do you remember?
I think it was 2 hours and 30 minutes or so. I think I'd be less.
You get that, guys? 2 hours and 30 minutes. This is somebody that could get through 50 or 60 questions in 3 hours before. So 2 hours and 30 minutes. And what was the result in July?
I passed.
You passed, yeah. Yay! Now, you had a weird passing story because in the way that only Florida can do this.
Yes.
You want to tell us what happened?
Well, I passed the MBE, but I didn't pass the Florida part. Okay. And the Florida part was the essay part. And it was interesting that I thought that I needed to keep taking both parts. Right. Because my English was no good. Jackson even sent me to college. And it was hard because I thought that I needed to keep on taking the MBE to be able to pull the Florida part. So I took with the whole material, did it again, and I was able to, I was always struggling with constitutional law since I studied in 2001. It was interesting, and I was always fighting. If you look to the webpage, the Facebook page, all my comments were, I hate constitutional law. Yeah, and I started changing that. Yeah. And that was the question that made me pass. Yeah. It's weird. Constitutional law, I can't believe it, but it was good.
There you go. Yeah. So you got a passing score in Florida, but then the examiners reported it in a very weird way.
Oh, yes.
Yes, you remember that?
We was in Puerto Rico, and my husband was the one giving me the score. Right. And he says, I call him, and I cannot open the results. Can you please check? And he called me with this voice. Okay. I'm sorry, you didn't pass. You have to take it again. And he was so sad. And I said, like, which part did I pass? And he said, it says pass, fail, fail. And I was like, okay, but which part? And he says, part A. And I was like, which one is part A? And I started calling Kelly, and I started calling Jackson, sending my results, the previous one, and did I pass or didn't I? And Jackson confirmed to Kelly that I did pass, and I was still not a believer. Yeah. I waited 3 days for the letter, and when I saw the letter, I said, well, I did pass. Yeah.
The website was wrong. The website should have said pass, fail, pass, and it didn't.
No, it didn't.
And this is the same exam that told somebody that they had passed who failed, which is really horrible. Yeah. I mean, they just, so don't believe that stuff. I mean, wait for the letter. Trust me, wait for the letter. In all jurisdictions, wait for the letter. But so you passed, but it took us, I don't know, it was like slow motion passing, right? Kelly and I are like, and Kelly's texting me saying, this is pass. And I'm like, yeah, I'm almost certain this is pass. Why is it saying fail? So we're like, Evelyn, just sit tight, man. You're going to get the letter. It's going to be okay. So what was it like when you get the letter?
I haven't received it yet. Because I didn't took MPRE, so okay. Right. I took MPRE now in November.
Yeah, okay, so now we're waiting for that one.
So I'm waiting for the results and for them to finally send me the letter. Yeah. But it was interesting because 4 days later, everyone was celebrating, and I was like, for real? Do I still have to wait? And I know there's people, I think it's in DC, that have the same experience.
Yeah.
So messing up is not only in Florida. But,
no, that's right.
and
We
it's
just heard
hard.
from a DC student on Thursday who just found out that they passed.
Oh my God.
Yeah, is that crazy?
Yes.
So, I mean, it's like, okay. So the system is broken all across the country.
Yes.
It doesn't matter where you are, right? So this is not a good thing, but there we are. So what's the feeling when you realize that you really did pass?
I think I'm still waiting for the letter. I don't know.
I promise you passed.
It's hard. Like, you have been seeing these results and you have been undermining yourself and believing that you're not able to do it. And all of a sudden, the results are there. I have the 2 results, but I'm still waiting for the letter.
Yeah.
When you have to check if you're awake or not.
Pinching yourself, right?
Kind of like that's my process.
Yeah.
And I know I passed. I know everything is okay, but I haven't even tell any of my friends or anyone because I need the letter. I just want to be sure.
Oops, this is going out to the world.
No, I don't mind. This morning, a friend told me, like, oh, did you pass the Florida bar? And I said, who told you? I've only said to a couple of friends, like
right.
small
There
group.
you go.
And it was, I think I'm so, it's so uncomfortable to be failing and everyone around you thinking like, weren't you a great attorney and weren't you supposed to be a practicing attorney?
Yeah.
How can you not pass an exam that you're supposed to know?
Yeah.
And it's not the exam, it's not the knowledge, it's not you, it's how the process works with your brain and make you feel that you cannot do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is
Pretty crazy.
my way to say to the world that I passed the Florida bar.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. This will be exciting. This will be a big. This will be a viral video. I can tell you.
Oh my God.
That's so great. We've got our boot campers here. They've been working with photo reading and mind mapping today. A little bit of essay writing. Tomorrow they're going to actually start into the process of creating essays and multiple choice exams and so on. What advice do you have for them?
Keep practicing. Don't give up. It took me a long time, but I was able to do it. And if I started learning English in 7th grade, it's not my first language. My husband and I started speaking in English all the time just for me to be in the bubble. But if I did it, you can do it. I am not special. The thing that I've been practicing law is a different jurisdiction. It's different. And you just have to do the process. Check the boxes. Keep on doing. Don't think if you're behind or not. Just do it. I was the one finishing a couple of days after the due date and not scoring good on all the exams. But all of a sudden, the passing score was there.
Yeah.
You just have to do the process, check the boxes, and please check the multiple choices. It's not just the wrong answer or why it was wrong. It took me and 2 previous Celebration Bar students to start discussing one constitutional law multiple choice. And that multiple choice was the essay question. And it was not the process of how we get it right or we get it wrong. It was why. We usually said, oh, it was D and I put B. No. Go into it, look why, read, and we were so sure we got it right, and why is it wrong? Yeah. And it took us a discussion of 2 hours, and that was the best 2 hours of my life.
Yeah.
That was my essay question.
Off, didn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we were like maybe 3 days before the exam, so you don't think you have the luxury of taking 2 hours just for one multiple choice. But you know what? That's how it's gonna pay for you on the exam, because that multiple choice is there for a process of learning why or why not. And that's what you need for the essay questions, to be able to discuss on the essay.
Yeah. You also participated in the group coaching calls with Kelly.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about those?
Those calls were a lifesaver when you were so conflicted that you didn't know if you were the only alien in Earth. So coaching calls for me were a way to keep you grounded, like everyone is doing the process, everyone is having the same struggles. And it was interesting to see how people deal with the problem they have, how they manage time, because for me, time managing was crucial. That's something that those coaching calls did for me.
Yeah.
How to be able to manage and how to see how other people struggles and get up and did the.
Yeah, and not to put too fine a point on it, but during the time you were studying, we had Hurricane Maria.
Oh, yes.
And you were having to go back and forth to Puerto Rico. Yes. So, I mean, it couldn't have gotten much worse, could it?
No. Not knowing how your family is, it was nerve-wracking. It was hard. And I was trying to study, but I couldn't concentrate. And I couldn't do anything. I was there. We moved to Florida to be able to get sooner to Puerto Rico if something happened. But all of a sudden, you have no news, no nothing. Right. And there was no way I was going to study like that. Right. So after everything was getting to normal, I was able to go back to study. But the video of hurricanes that Jackson have, it's interesting because no one knows how is the process until you leave it, until you're there, until you're unable to get in contact with anyone. And all of a sudden, we just came to check on the house, and all of a sudden, we are stranded here. We can't go back to Puerto Rico. We couldn't do anything more.
Yeah, and I remember that point where you were stranded here, and it was just the frustration that you had, and taking care of your family, and thinking about all that, and thinking about studying for the bar. And, you know, there's just a lot going on, right? And you have to be able to compartmentalize and say, okay, for the next couple of hours I'm studying on the bar, and then I'm going to deal with family stuff, and then I'm going to do the next, right?
And I did study for the bar in Puerto Rico the previous time, so all my books and all my mind maps, all my materials, everything was in Puerto Rico. So I have to start from fresh, and Celebration did help me.
Yeah.
They were there for me when I needed, and they go the extra mile. So
Thank you.
I really appreciate that.
We're pleased to do that. And you know, and I've seen you give back too. You know, in our Facebook private group, you've been very active in supporting and encouraging people. That's one of the nice things about the course, I think, is that our successful students like Evelyn stick around. They don't just disappear, and they stay there to encourage and support. And it's kind of interesting, isn't it, to be on the other side of that now?
Yes. And I think it's interesting how people don't know, but they're going through the same process. Yeah. There was some girl talking about mind maps the other day, and there was someone asking the same question we did. And it's so good to be able to say something like, my experience was this, and I have this situation, so maybe you can check on this. Yeah. Just for the logistic or for the process of learning, how can you improve the other person's study time? That's great.
It's pretty cool.
For me, it's great. Yeah.
And so we really appreciate that. That's a great thing. I think maybe we should open up to any questions that anybody's got, because this is a rare opportunity where you get to talk to a successful bar taker. Repeat the question. So you're talking about trusting the process, and how do you let go, and how do you do that?
I think everyone has to find their own way. For me, it was doing the whole study guide from beginning to end. Because what I used to do is I started too early, then I paused, took a week, and then went back, and I couldn't remember the first subject, and went back again. And it was, you're gonna sit, you're gonna do it, you're not gonna stop, this is your schedule, and don't look up other process. This is your method. Because when you're when you're studying, all you wanna do is learn what the other person is doing, so maybe you can include it in your process, but you already started. So it was more, let's check box by box. That's why for me, that's the best part, and that was Kelly's phrase, let's check those boxes. If I started photo reading, I was gonna keep photo reading even if I was falling asleep. That didn't work because last night I was so tired that I couldn't keep my eyes open, but just do it. And I use the preliminals also to start trusting and believing in myself for me to be able to do the studying and doing the process. I'm sorry I'm using the same word again, but this is a step that you need to do. You have to believe that you're learning it. You need to learn from yourself what your body wants, how you're gonna know that you learn it. If everyone learns differently, why are you listening to someone else? Listen to yourself. Try to figure out what works for you. As soon as you do that, it's gonna be better. For me, it was mixing the outline. I did for a reading, but I also, when I felt that I have a doubt, instead of just flipping the pages or doing an activation process, I went to that page and read it. And that's not outside photo reading.
No, that's activation. That's super dip and scan,
Yeah.
right? So, or rapid read. So you went in more depth,
Yes.
and then you went to that area.
And
right?
if it took me more time, that's what I did.
Yeah,
So it was breaking with the idea that just flipping pages didn't work. It was for me to know that I just needed to trust that I knew it, that it was there, and being able to manage the stress of the exam. When you let go, you're gonna go to the exam and you're gonna feel like you're going to boot camp, that you're going to your Starbucks near your house, that you're going to your friend's house. Studying should be comfortable, it shouldn't be forced. And that's what I did. I just enjoy it. I find a way for it to be a good.
So the question is, how, being bilingual, what was the impact of photo reading and mind mapping?
That I know it.
Yeah.
That even though I always thought that language was a barrier, it wasn't. I was able to look at my mind maps. I was able to recall the information. I was able to put my mind maps around my house. And I was being able to see it, understanding, recalling the information, and being able to see that the language is not a barrier. It's just something different, but it makes you think in the language that you need to do the exam. It takes you to the mental state you need, because I was trying to stay in the bubble, freaking bubble. How you do it in English or Spanish, it doesn't matter, or any other language. I think it's gonna help you focus that the information is there, that the language is not the issue on the exam. It's gonna be the issue for you to write the essays, but when you have the information to write, you don't have to think twice. You're gonna put it there. But if you don't have it, it's not the language, it's because you don't have the information. Yeah. So that's how my maps for me works. Yeah. They were a reassurance that I knew the subjects.
When you were using your mind maps and in the exam, were you able to visualize what was on the mind map in your head? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. See, that's one of the, I know some of you are like, huh? That's what happens. The mind map becomes embedded in your non-conscious, and you start to see, oh, that went there and this went here, right? Yes. It's like putting the puzzle pieces together.
I usually have problem with sorts. So for me, that mind map was like how I can imagine fraction, third parties, intentional.
See.
So for me on the exam, when I was doing the multiple choices, it was my head like going, which place should I go this way? Okay, this is your answer. Yeah. And they do work. Use color, because that's what I can remember on the exam. Yeah, and colors. Sometimes I said to myself, it was in this corner and it was orange. So I need to remember what was orange, what was in that corner. And it worked.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You remember what you maybe don't think you're gonna remember, the color on the page, but that's how it works.
What paraliminals did you use?
Okay, so once you did a challenge,
yes.
And you make us, like June is doing right now, that every day you're gonna do something different. He did it on the paraliminals too. But for me, I created belief, let go, overcoming overwhelm. Because
That's a good one.
you need to believe that you can do it, and if you have all this information in your brain, how are you going to process all the information, stay calm, learn? And so it was like, there's a lot of stuff. I need to take it and be able to process the information. And the whole idea of sitting at this hour and waking up at this hour, so it was overcoming overwhelm for me was good.
Yeah, and sleeping deeply, wake, relax.
Oh yes, those were
that's
compulsory.
nice.
Yes,
Yeah.
I couldn't fall asleep without those.
Yeah.
And waking up, I think the waking up was interesting because I said to myself, like, you can fall asleep, but how is this one is going to make me be awake?
Right.
That's not gonna work. It does.
Yeah.
It makes you feel like it's a fresh morning, that you can do and accomplish everything you have that day.
Yeah.
So it's a weird one, but it was good. It makes me feel positive. It made me feel enthusiastic with the idea of sitting to study. So, and the 10 minutes,
the 10 minutes
that one I
supercharge.
did it on the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's not for doing the whole paraliminal, because everything was going around you and you wanted to look and be aware, but just to hear the voice of something calming and relaxing, it was good.
What was the game changer in getting your confidence up on multi-state?
Being able to do more than 50-something multiple choices.
Yeah.
I think because I second-guessed myself on language, I wasn't able to finish the multiple choices. And I didn't like torts, or I didn't like evidence that much, but I really liked real property, but they were so long, they were gonna take me more time. So by doing the photo reading process, I was able to read faster and being able to finish the multiple choices and save time for those of real property that maybe they're long, but they're easy.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a big deal. I think when you know that you can get them all done in 2.5 hours, that gives you 30 minutes to play with. So you can go up and go to the bathroom, you can stretch, you can close your eyes for a minute, you can just take the pressure off. Is huge, right? I mean, it's like, okay, I now know what my game plan is, instead of being completely jammed up the whole time,
Yes.
right? I gotta go, and then you finish. Well, I am beyond thrilled, and I know everybody is. And you are in a very rare group of people to come from Puerto Rico, take the Florida bar, to pass it in the midst of the hurricane and all of the difficulties and challenges there. And we are so proud of you and so thrilled for your success, and just delighted that you came back here to share. I just want to thank all of you guys for listening and watching. I know we're going to put this video out, and it's going to be very popular. People will know you passed the bar, Evelyn. I think we know that for sure. So let's give her a big hand.
thank you.